Do you know where the tallest mountain in the world is?
I'm guessing you're going to tell us.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. It is week 73, and we are excited to be with you here once again.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Alyssa is going to tell us more about
Guam!
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you about 2 hikes from Guam that I really like, or one's got like a nice beach view and one's got like just a nice island view. And the cool thing about it is, as I was watching the opening again, it reminded me that there's a clip from the opening that's from one of these places today. So see if you can find it. If not, you better go back and watch it again. So let's look at the pictures. I have the first beach that I want to take you to. Became one of my favorite places to go to the beach because there weren't tons and tons of people there. And this is Phi Phi Beach. And it had like this little path kind of thing you can see right in front of you that you had to walk on, all marked out, and a little ladder step thing down to cross over some water here to get to the side of the beach that I wanted to go to. You have to cross
This is
that
so
board.
beautiful, because when I went, I don't think there was water going under this part.
I think depending on when the tides are.
I think I went when the tide was out.
So it was dry.
Yeah, but this is a really cool shot here.
Yeah. And then that's what it looks like as you keep going, but you're looking back toward all the rest of the hotels. So basically, this is like at the end of all the hotels and like the really, really nice part of the downtown area. So it's like the furthest beach you can get to from here. And then when you step off that edge there, you get some nice coral rock. And then you get this beautiful view. So it is a beautiful beach. And right at the end of it, there's that big cliff. And the cliff has a famous story that supposedly there were 2 lovers from the island, but for some reason they couldn't get married, and so they just braided their hair together and then jumped off that point together. Supposedly, it's like the Romeo and Juliet story, basically, of the island. So that's called 2 Lovers Point, and it's a very famous tourist destination.
Such a sad, something you don't tell kids to do.
No, it is a sad story, but I'm pretty sure it's just a tall tale.
I sure hope so.
But the people like the story and just the idea of like this is a spot of true love, and so there's like a little platform up there that you can pay money to go to. Some people like buy little locks that they lock on to a gate saying that they're going to have love that will last forever, and all the Asian tourists really love that. Anyways, we're at the beach though. So this is Phi Phi Beach, and there are like a couple little private houses tucked back here in the beach, but other than that, you can only get here from that little walkway that I showed you at the beginning, and then it's really quiet, which is super nice, not full of people. Most beaches are pretty empty in comparison to a lot of places around the world. So if you're on the beach, you might see some of these.
Coconuts.
Yeah, this
the
one's
remnants of one.
all empty and shredded and just lying there on the beach, and a lot of really beautiful coral that you get to see. It almost looks like it's like stars expanding on that thing. I don't know. It was just a really pretty piece of coral. And this is one of the few beaches on Guam that you actually might find seashells at, and lots of little pieces of broken coral and stuff, because it'll just kind of get washed up on the beach. So we like to look for some seashells at this beach, or sometimes sea glass. You can find a lot of sea glass. So if glass gets dropped into the ocean, because of all the salt and grit and everything, it rubs off all the rough edges and kind of smooths it up and gives it kind of like a glazed look instead of shiny smooth glass. It's really pretty, and it's fun to look for when you're at the beach. So this is Phi Phi Beach, which was easily one of my favorite beaches because it was so nice and quiet, and that little walk to get there was just kind of fun. And then here's a hike that's really famous on Guam. The bummer is, as I was thinking about the hike, I realized I don't really have pictures during the hike because I just got on the trail and I was like, let's get to the top. So we have pictures from the top. But this is a hike to Mount Lam Lam. Now there are actually 2 like summits for Mount Lam Lam, and this is the one that most people go to, but there's actually like the true Mount Lam Lam, which is like off the trail in the opposite direction a little bit. But you need to know where you're going because the trail isn't marked out so well. And like in all this tall grass, it would be really tough to find. But this hike has some really beautiful views of the island. It's kind of, I guess it's a little bit dark, but the hills are really pretty, all the rolling hills, because this is like the countryside of the island instead of like where all the tourists are and everything. So during the rainy season, it's pretty green. When it's not rainy season, it's not so green. But at the top of this mountain, which their big claim for this mountain is that it's the tallest mountain on Earth, because Guam is right on the edge of the Mariana Trench. So if you measure from the bottom of the Mariana Trench to the top of Mount Lam Lam, it's the tallest mountain on Earth.
Just not the highest above sea level.
No, it's just the tallest one from the bottom of the Mariana Trench to the top.
Okay.
So this is Lam Lam, and there are a lot of crosses at the top of the mountain. Guam is a very, very Catholic island, and so every year for Easter, they will carry up a new cross to the top of this mountain, and there are like all these different stops on the way, just like there would have been stops for Jesus. I think kind of like to match up with what you would see in Israel and the Via Dolorosa, that there are like all these stops in his journey to being crucified. So they'll do all of these stops and they'll carry up the cross to the top of the hill, and then they'll just add another cross. So there are a lot of crosses up there, and some of them have fallen down or weren't made as well and they don't stay up. And it is really slippery in springtime to go up there because it can rain a lot, and it's all red mud, dirt stuff, and it can be really tough to get up there. So when they do it, they usually go and they cut down all the grass ahead of time so that large groups of people can go through, because there's a lot of people that'll come and do this thing every year, and then they'll add a new cross up there. And you've done the hike.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons you don't have pictures on the way up is because there really is not much to see on the way up.
That's also true.
It's kind of a boring view until you get to the top, and then it's worth being there. And it's not a long, it's like a 30-minute hike up.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is not much to see on the way there, so.
You just get there and then all of a sudden there's things
Then there's things to take pictures of. Yeah.
Yep. When my family came to visit, I took them on the hike, and they all did it. Mom, Dad, and everybody. Mm-hmm. And people were really impressed, because it's a little strenuous going straight up like that.
Especially when you try to go up really fast like you did when we were there.
Typically, that is how it takes. Yeah. But they all did it, and it was a fun experience, and they got to see a little bit of Guam up there on Mount Lam Lam. So if you go to Guam, you better climb that mountain, because that's the tallest one there is on Guam, supposedly. So yeah, that's a little bit about Guam and a couple of the hikes that I really liked, or places I like to go, and I'll show you some more next time.
Mm-hmm.
But today,
we have a new hidden object, and you have some more story.
Yes, I do have
I just wanted to throw that in there.
Okay, good job.
Okay, I'm going to let you tell your story.
Okay, thanks. I will. Oops, got this stuck together. So last time we ended our story about Tony, where he was in the military, and remember he had stepped on a nail and he ended up getting a really bad infection in his leg. He was stuck in the hospital, all these different things. When he got out, he was like, man, I really just want to go to America. So he had this idea in his mind, and he sent a letter to a captain, and he got a letter back saying that one of the passengers was sick and that the boat was going to leave in 2 days, and he could be the passenger if he wanted to be. So he got everything together as fast as he could, gathered some money, and gathered some things from his family, said goodbye to everybody, and boarded a boat from Naples. So he had to travel to another city. He boarded a boat from Naples, Italy, to go all the way to New York City. And he had 2 luggages, 2 suitcases, and $30 American. That's all he had. But his dad said he knew some people. He had some friends in New York City. So he gave Tony some directions so then Tony could get there and find these friends. But he was really excited. He's finally getting to go on an adventure, and he's getting to go to America, which he had been thinking about for a long time. And he got to go on the journey. So he started the long trip all the way across the ocean. And finally, they could see just the edge of the coastline, and he knew they were getting close to New York City. And then he saw something in the harbor that helped him know right away they were in New York. And that was the Statue of Liberty. And he was really excited. He'd only heard about it, and he got to see the Statue of Liberty. And there were all these boats around, and you could see there were business people on them and people going back and forth. And All of a sudden, he realized he was in a strange country. He didn't understand what people were saying around him because not all of them were Italians, and he was starting to hear speaking from other places, and he was supposed to find people he didn't know in a strange city. He didn't have the language, and he only had $30. Starting to get a little bit scary for him. Well, he found his way to the train station, okay? So he got on a train, and he tried to look at his father's directions, and he realized he couldn't understand everything else around him, so he went to the conductor, and he told the conductor, Bleecker Street, because that was the street he needed to get off on. And the conductor nodded his head, and he said, okay, go back there, and I'll tell you when to get off. Somehow, maybe with enough hand motions, Tony understood what the conductor wanted him to do. So he rode on the train for a long time, and he looked out the windows, and he saw lots of things go by, and he felt like he was seeing different things than what his dad had described to him about these friends. And so he went back to the conductor, and he said, Bleecker Street. And the conductor said, oh, get off at the next stop. Go back 2. So he had missed his street. So he got off at the next train stop and realized he didn't know how to find the train that went the opposite direction. But fortunately, he found a little boy who was shining shoes who spoke Italian. So that helped him feel right at home. And the Italian boy helped him get the right way to the train. He went 2 stops back and got off the train. Then his father's directions made complete sense. He followed them, the different streets. He found Thompson Street. And he heard a house with a lot of noise going on and found that that was the house of his father's friends. And he walked in the door, and there was so much Italian and lots of hugging and people and smells that he recognized. And oh, perfect. He had found his father's friends, and they were so glad to see him. They welcomed him to the country, and they said that they even had a job ready for him. There was a mechanic just down the street who was looking for someone to hire, and the mechanic was Italian, so he'd be able to communicate with Tony, and Tony could learn some English while he worked for him. And he said, perfect, well, but I only have $30, so where am I going to live? And they said, oh, that's no problem. We know somebody else who has a 6th-floor apartment, and they have space that you can rent from them. So in just a few hours, he had some friends already, he had a new job, and he already had a place to stay. God was really looking out for him. So he started the next morning nice, bright and early at 7 a.m., and he worked for a mechanic. He would just hand the mechanic the tools that he needed, and then he'd work on the cars. And so Tony learned a lot about cars and about running a business. And after about 6 months, he decided it'd be really fun to be a taxi driver. So he got his own car, and he drove all over New York City as a taxi driver. And he really enjoyed that job. He liked driving and all the traffic and crazy and busyness. But he was thinking about it. And he thought, I could do something even better. I could be a chauffeur. So he bought a nicer car, and he heard about someone who was looking to hire a person to be a chauffeur. Now, this guy's name was Mr. Root. And Mr. Root was known as one of those people who didn't really want to listen and talk to other people. He was very particular about things. So Tony decided he was going to talk to Mr. Root about being his chauffeur. Well, he got up really early in the morning, and it was so cold in New York City. And it was very cold in his apartment in the mornings. And so his alarm clock would go off, and he would listen to it go off, and he'd watch the little arm on the side twist until it finished. And then he'd jump out of bed, quick run over to his stove to start warming up his breakfast. And he was turning on the heat for his breakfast, and he thought, man, it'd be really nice if when I got home from work, I could have a pot of chicken noodle soup already cooked for me. But I don't know, I could. And then an idea came to his head. He thought about his alarm clock and had that little arm that would twist when it was time for his alarm to go off. So he brought his alarm clock over to the stove, and he hooked it up with some string, and somehow with his stove, and he was able to get it worked out where the heat would stay on for about 3 hours until the timer was done. And then when the alarm would go off, it would release and the heat would turn off and his food would be done. So then when he got home, he'd just have to warm it up again. So that was a great plan. It was going to take 3 hours to make that soup, and his stove could just cook it for him. He was really smart like that. So anyways, he was going to visit this Mr. Root guy. And he went in to visit him, and he went in very confidently. And he told Mr. Root, I would like to be your next chauffeur. So Mr. Root looked at him really sternly. How much are you going to charge? $450 a month. That was a lot of money back then. But Tony said it very seriously. And Mr. Root said, young man, don't you know that's a lot of money? And Tony nodded his head, but he didn't say anything else. Mr. Root said, well, you call me back when you think about a more reasonable price. So Tony left. And guess what? Mr. Root called him back and said he would take him as his chauffeur. He said, be there sharp at 1 p.m. tomorrow. So Tony did that. He was a chauffeur for Mr. Root for a while, and Mr. Root didn't even talk to him in the car. He would ring a bell once if he wanted him to stop, twice for turning right, or 3 times for turning left, and that's all he had to do. So Tony had lots of time to just think and be quiet all to himself and just think about different things. So he decided he'd like a part-time job, and he decided his part-time job would be to pick up eggs from a farm and bring them into the city. So he got a really great relationship with this farm called Aurora Farms, and he would bring in eggs to the city. And when his brother came to the United States, he and his brother opened up a grocery store. And they had their store called Aurora Farms with 1-day-old eggs, which was pretty great for being in the city to have eggs that were only 1 day old. So they had a great grocery store business. Lots and lots of people came, even during the Depression, and his business was doing great. And somebody came to him and said, we would like to buy your business. We'll give you $30,000 for it. So Tony thought about it. Yeah, I think I'd like to get into the restaurant business. So he opened up a restaurant and he let this other person run the grocery store. And after a little bit, he saw that the grocery store had closed. He said, what happened? Well, the people just left. They gave up. So Tony thought, well, that's not right. So he left his brother in charge of the restaurant and he went back and reopened the grocery store again. He really loved working at the grocery store. He liked talking to all the people. He liked coming up with new ideas to sell food. But he really especially liked it when one girl came into the grocery shop. It seemed like all the other customers disappeared when she showed up. And you're going to have to come back next time to find out more about her in our story of Tony the Little Rascal.
Oh no. Are you sure this is a story for little kids?
Yeah, it's called The Little Rascal.
Okay. Because I know it's a story for adults. Okay. Anyway. We are going to tell you today about a family that we introduced to you last fall and give you an update on them. And it is Trevor and Amelia Galbraith. And I spelled their last name correctly this time.
Oh, good job.
Last time I had it with 2 B's. So they are on pre-field ministry right now. They are going around to churches to raise money, raise supporters, both financially and people who can pray for them as they get ready to go to Great Britain so that they can really devote their time to the ministry without having to work a full-time job to provide for their needs. So I asked them a few questions about where they are right now in their pre-field ministry, and their support level is at about 38%. They are hoping that very soon they will be able to get to 50% because they have heard that once missionaries get to 50% of their support, rest of it comes a lot quicker. And so that is what they are hoping to be at in the next few months. Here's another picture of the family, a little older than the first one. Their youngest girl's a little smaller there. But that is their family. Their family is doing well. They travel a lot, and they are in the process right now. They are either in the process or they just finished moving into a mission home in Ohio because Iowa was previously their base for where they would go out to different churches. So anyway, they're in a new place, and that brings along with it changes and a lot of work, and so they are just trying to adjust well to their new location and a new local church ministry when they aren't out visiting other churches. And they are praying that they would just keep relying on the Lord and allowing Him to guide them along this way. They are often surprised at how well the girls can adapt to life on the road, which is a good thing. If your whole family is enjoying it and getting along well with all this traveling, it makes it a lot easier. He said that COVID has definitely had a big impact on the whole deputation process. Deputation is another word for pre-field ministry. There was a time for about 6 months when church meetings just did not happen. They were noticing that booking meetings ever since then is also hard because a lot of churches have not gotten back to what they would call normal. And many of the churches are trying to catch up in the area of finances and also the number of missionaries that they have booked to come in. And so that has slowed things down a little bit, but it has also taught them some new skills and some life lessons. One thing that is a little difficult for them is that they feel that they don't always have the opportunity to do ministry in the way they'd like, which makes sense because they want to get over to Great Britain and there's things that they want to do over there and they can't really do those here. So they're looking forward to getting on the field and having the opportunity to build more long-term relationships because everything here is kind of short-term, which makes sense when you're always moving, going to different places. And if you remember last time we talked about them and opportunities they've had to build relationships in Great Britain, previously it has been one of their favorite things to do. They do have some pretty regular opportunities to meet some new people and see their burden for England, but it's not the same as being able to go there and do it there. They've also met a few people who have really taken an interest in their ministry, and they've been able to have some extended conversations with them. And they do hope that, if anything, that they've been able to encourage people as they've gone along, because you can't always really tell when you've had a long conversation with someone. And so that is one of their desires as they continue to go to churches. They're going to be doing quite a bit of traveling in the coming weeks, so pray that they will be safe, that they'll have the energy they need, and that their van will keep going without too many issues. In their most recent prayer letter that they sent out, they said that their minivan has been getting getting high in the mileage area, and they can tell. And so just pray that the van holds up well for them. November and December, they will spend about 3 weeks in the UK, United Kingdom. They will visit potential church planting locations and spend time with their team. So they would appreciate prayers as they make plans for that trip. And of course, continue to pray that their support level would get up to 50% and that they would be able to get the rest of it pretty quickly after that. So there is the Galbraith family.
Fun.
Yeah.
So be praying for them that they'll make it to England here soon and they'll get the rest of their support. That's cool that they get to take a survey trip though.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be really fun and help them kind of even get more excited about getting there.
Yeah. Yep. And still more traveling to do around the country. So pray that they would just have the health they need and that they wouldn't have any hindrances as they go to each of these places.
Yep.
Thank you for coming and joining us once again. We always are glad that you would take the time to do this little adventure with us every week. And we hope that you learned something, and we hope that you will pray for the Galbraiths. And we will see you next week. Bye.